What a great lead-in to our topic this morning, Tanya. There was one quote that I picked up on. I don't know if anyone noticed that. It said lawyers might be the next profession to be replaced by computers. So I was surprised I didn't hear a collective sigh of relief in the audience that didn't say accountants. Having said that, this morning's topic, disruption in the profession, and specifically, how can CPAs adapt for the future? Welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Amy MacFarlane. I'm an educator at the University of Prince Edward Island and a corporate director. And joining me this morning are panelists Chad Heron, Vice President at Cows Inc., Kathy O'Rourke, Managing Partner, Grant Thornton, Prince Edward Island, and Kyle Smith, Controller at FIGR Inc., PEI's only licensed cannabis producer. So everyone in this room and joining us online this morning is familiar with disruption. We've witnessed how Netflix and other streaming services have disrupted the entertainment industry, how Amazon has and continues to disrupt the retail sector, and how Skype and FaceTime have disrupted mainstream communications. The session this morning is intended to be a conversation about the changing role of a CPA and how our profession may evolve in the future. CPA Canada has completed some work in this area through their Foresight project, but we'd like to hear from our own members on this topic. This event is being live streamed on Facebook. We may go viral. So you can submit questions through Facebook Live if you're watching us from elsewhere, or ask questions here directly by raising your hand, and we'll get a microphone to you. Please, when asking questions, introduce yourself first, followed by your question. You may direct your question to a specific panelist, or I can ask a panelist to respond with their perspective. I'm going to get started by asking each panelist to provide an opening mark, either of their choosing or specifically in response to the question, how do you see the roles of CPAs changing in the future? And I'm going to start by asking Chad to lead us off.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Chad, as introduced. I'm happy to be here. I guess I probably should have had a better prepared answer for this concise question. It was kind of a softball, but I think broadly speaking, I think the role of CPAs will become more broad as we go forward. We'll kind of remove a level up from just financial, as most of us are doing in our current roles, and look more broadly at strategy, at business. And I think that really the program and the training needs to change as we go forward to adjust to that as things pop up. As the video showed, there's lots of things changing and new areas to get involved in. So I think we'll get into it in more detail, but just broadly, I think it's going to broaden.
Good morning, everyone. So from my perspective in our business, I see the change being around repetitive tasks. Obviously, we're seeing lots and lots of that from our CPAs and moving more from an accountant to an advisor. And so in order to do that, I see specialization as becoming more important, that our CPAs will need to have really in-depth knowledge of a certain area so they can help business owners sort of thrive in their business.
Good morning. Hopefully I'm not the third person every time because I feel like they cover a lot by the time it gets to me. But I think the way that the role of the CPA is going to change in the future, I think we have a lot to look forward to because like you say, I think a lot of the repetitive, less exciting tasks are going to be shifted off our plates to artificial intelligence, new technologies, and it'll leave us probably more time just to provide extra value. Looking at the output from those technologies or AI, and we'll become probably more advisors, like Kathy suggested.
Thank you. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand and jump in at any time, and we will defer to you. We did have some members submit questions in advance in response to the call. So not seeing any hands yet, I will jump right to one of those. So the first question I'm going to direct to you, Chad. but I won't always leave you third. Chad, how do we get the message out to young people, high school students in particular, those just entering university, that the accounting profession is and will remain in high demand and won't disappear due to artificial intelligence?
Okay. So I'd say advertising obviously is something that CPA does now, and they do a pretty good job of. And I think some of the recent campaigns have really focused on the stuff outside of just the financial, which I think is important to draw in that crowd. They need to advertise, they need to be smart about how they advertise. They need to advertise where teens and 20s are, which is, you know, that's changed a lot. So I've noticed that they seem to be more engaged on social media and things where that crowd is, which I think is the easiest step. They also need to do outreach, especially at universities, which I know CPA PI is doing or planning to do in the near future, is to get out to UPEI, get out to the schools and talk and do your career days, do that type of thing. And then I think we just need to talk about, which again, back to their campaign they did, I think we need to talk about the jobs that we're doing and really show, you know, the opportunities that are out there that aren't just, I think unfortunately for a long time people thought about CPAs and accountants as bookkeepers and kind of pigeonholed into that, which, to be honest, can be difficult to make seem very attractive as a career to teenagers. But as we mentioned, a lot of that stuff's going away, and a lot of that will be automated. So we really need to focus in on what broad scope, as I keep going back to that, what that could be. And I think really we should look at it as providing advice, you know, in the firms, or if you're working at a company, the analytical skills you can bring, all that type of stuff, to talk about strategy and go broader and eventually work your way up into management.
Kathy or Kyle, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I just think what I see in our business is that our younger people that are joining the firm are looking for leadership opportunities really early in their career, and that we need to sort of provide those at a really early age, and not just, you know, leading, you know, a social event, but really true leadership. And I think, you know, once that sort of filters into the university and then even to the high schools, which I think is really important, that we aren't just doing repetitive tasks and they are providing value, I think that'll be the catalyst to bring more people into our profession.
All right, I'll direct this next question to Kyle. In your view, what needs to be done to attract more young people, and females in particular, which we're struggling with currently on Prince Edward Island, to the accounting profession?
I think it's a great question, and whenever I think about that, like I think about all the females that work in the accounting profession already, and in my view of what like the current state is, and maybe it's not reflective of what's incoming into the profession, but like there's tons of females in the profession right now. I think about all the people I know, and there's a lot of brilliant people. But that being said, I think maybe the issue might be forwarding these females into leadership roles. I think most professions struggle with this. Like you look at industry, and there's a wage gap, a gender gap in leadership roles, and I think that's what we need to think about in the accounting profession as well. Is how can we ensure that we minimize that gender gap and the wage gap when it comes to leadership in the profession. I thought about this, and it's I don't have the answer, obviously, but I think there are things that we can put in place, and not just for females either, like for all people entering the profession. I think it would probably be good practice, like in the CPA program, we're assigned a mentor. I think that would be worthwhile to continue, to consider them more of like a career mentor after you exit the education program. I think you need to establish goals and objectives and specific ways that you can meet those goals. I think that applies well to females as well, just as much as it does to males in the profession. But I think really, I think we need to lead by example as well. So if you look at, I would say, you know, anybody who's having a leadership meeting the next little while, like look around the room and see who's in the meeting with you. And you know, if there is a gender gap, or I think you need to consider why that is, and you probably should look at correcting it and see what measures you can put in place to ensure that you have a balanced leadership, because I think that just provides good example and something to strive for everybody.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, so in our business, I know that, you know, we traditionally had a very old business model that was focused on input. So the more input, the faster you climbed. And, you know, I think we've been trying to flip that around a bit at Grant Thornton and talk more about output versus how many hours someone spends at our business. And as well, be really focused on the flexibility in the workplace, and not just flexibility that doesn't really have any backbone to it, but really allow all of our people to work from wherever they need to work from on any given day. And I look at role models today in our business, and a lot of them, like myself, grew up in the old model of doing business. And so I don't know if we have enough young women role models in the profession that have made it to the point in their career from start to finish in sort of how they can work. But we do have a lot of young women that are in the profession that are doing really great things, and how we, you know, focus on them, especially on PEI, because as you alluded to, Amy, I'm really worried about the number of females that are joining the profession out of university or coming from high school. And so I think on Prince Edward Island, we really have to focus on those young women that are doing really, really great things in our profession.
Did you have anything to add, Chad? All right. Any questions at this point? I don't want to certainly neglect you folks. All right. Don't be shy. Someone has to break the ice at some point. Okay. I will continue on then with Kathy. Kathy, what do you feel are the most important benefits that should be offered by employers, and you alluded to some of this already in your previous response, to attract and retain new employees to their organization?
Yeah, so I think what I see is that the biggest benefit that we can offer people is the opportunity to grow, and to give them growth opportunities. And so I think if we're trying to bring someone into our business and the offer is just to do the same thing every year, but more of it, it's not very appealing way to attract new people to our business. So as I had alluded to or mentioned earlier, I think young people are really craving early leadership, the ability to grow and do something different and to be challenged. And those businesses that offer that, I think, will have more success. I think, you know, if you're not investing in the technology to take away repetitive tasks, and that's what you're asking people to come do, I think you're going to struggle to attract new talent.
Kyle, I know you've recently gone through a recruiting process. Do you have any additional words of wisdom from the private sector?
Yeah, that's tough. It was a tough recruiting process. We were looking for a young CPA to join our team. We didn't end up finding one, and it was a good job, good pay. But I think what we ended up settling on, we have somebody in a Master's of Finance, and also a great addition to the team. But I think something, you know, we could offer is just like flexibility, and Kathy kind of alluded to that earlier. You know, people work differently. Not everybody works 8 to 5. Some people work early, some people work late. But I think that'd be a good, you know, good thing to consider when recruiting new people.
All right, looking around, I'm overwhelmed by all the hands in the air. Okay, I'll shift over to Chad. What do you see as the most significant challenges facing our profession over the next 10 years?
Okay. I think there's potential for a lot of change, I think, and for those of us that are already in the profession, that can be difficult. I know when I look at, we recently we had the Grant Thornton partners in at COWS doing a little bit of a tour, and I was talking to one of their leads who looks after all of their cloud accounting software. And that was really encouraging for me to hear, actually, to know that there's someone there that's dedicated to that and helping clients with that. But if you're already in the profession, to have that thrown on your, here we also need to become experts of this new software, which is not simple stuff, and especially when clients are coming to you with the difficult questions. I think that some of these technological hurdles that are coming are going to be difficult. Which I think if we react now on the front end of when people are coming through and doing their training and their final exams and stuff, we can start to incorporate a lot of that stuff in there and catch it so they're more prepared. But for those of us that are already through, it really comes down to the CPD and our own training. And so I think we really need to really look at CPD and what we're offering and what we allow for verifiable hours and all that type of stuff. I think, if some of these things, if blockchain, if AI, if that really takes off, we need to be the experts at the table for that stuff, because that's what people are going to look for. They're going to need experts, and if it's not us, it's going to be someone else. So I think we really need to get a handle on all of that stuff, where it's going, realize that there's change and be okay with change and embrace change, and then kind of continue to be the experts, because some of these people that are doing this, the hard coding behind Bitcoin or working on AI or working on any of that stuff, they can easily transition into the work we're doing and being advisors and helping companies with that stuff when they're looking for it. So if it's not us, it will be someone else, and I think it's important for us to get the training side of that down.
Kathy, Chad highlighted the training. I'm just wondering if you have anything to add from kind of public accounting space in terms of challenges you're seeing for either the profession or your firm in the next 10 years.
Yeah, so I think there is a major shift that's happening. I mean, traditionally, we would have always, been using historical data to help our clients. And I think today we know that that's not what's going to help our clients, that it has to be current data and future data. And as, Chad talked about, helping our clients get in the cloud is really important so that they have access to current data. And so as a firm, I think it's the shift, right, to the future, but still looking after clients who are operating in today's environment. And it's how fast do we need to go to be, to get to where we need to be in 10 years. And I think it's just balancing those two items. And so I think, I was talking to someone earlier and said, if you don't like change, we're probably not going to be the profession that you want to be in, because I see a tremendous amount of change over the next 10 years.
Kyle, let's shift gears to you. Let's think about your ideal world for a moment. And in your own personal ideal world, if the CPA profession factors into it, let's assume it does, what would the CPA profession look like in 10 years? So 2029.
I have to revise my thought process. I think that, we've talked a bit about it already. I think ideally, I would like to be doing less of the preparing. You want to get away from data manipulation and move towards analyzing data output and providing value at the other end. So right now, if you think about what you're doing, if you're preparing financial statements or financial reporting or tax preparation, you want to be on. Instead of on that end of it, I think we're all going to be moving towards analyzing the output of systems and advising clients in that way. It's a short answer. I don't know.
Amy, can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
Because I do think, you know, there's a lot of concern about where is our profession still going to be valid? And I actually see even more so as we enter into a more global environment and so much data coming off, you know, to our clients. The relationships are different. You know, years ago, our clients were just dealing with neighbors and people they knew, and now they're dealing with people all over the world. And I just think that the trusted advisor role is going to be even more important, and helping our clients sort through the data, what's real, what's not real, how do they interpret that data, you know, how do they keep their business safe from cyber security attacks. And so I just think it's going to be the same role, but just different data and different skill sets required to execute on the role.
So Kathy mentioned cybersecurity. Chad, what other or, yeah, I guess what other emerging skills do we need to adopt today to prepare for the future?
Yeah, I guess it's some of the things we've been saying. I mean, this goes without saying, but it's absolutely necessary that you're fluent in technology. And it's not even that, because there's just no way you can be, you know, trained in every possible thing that's out there. It's more the willingness to learn and to know where to go to get the info. Like, we're going to need to be self-starters a little bit with that stuff. When new things come along, there's lots of resources out there, but you need to know where to go to find them and how to do that stuff. So I think self-learning will be a big part of it, because as we've talked about now a lot, things are changing and it's really impossible to say exactly where it's going. We just know it's going to change and it's going to get broader. So I think, you know, welcoming to change in technology. But I think when I went through the program, which is a little bit ago now, like the things that, yeah, fair. The kind of the things that I really can recollect back to and think were really important to me were, like, as you said, you're getting a bunch of information when you're doing these questions. Some of it's important, some of it's not. Having the skills to kind of pick apart, well, this is important, that's not, this is a priority, that's a less priority, and then provide advice and a final concise conclusion to whether it's your boss or a client or whatever. I think that is the kind of fundamental thing when I think about CPA in the program, and whatever you layer on top of that just works in that kind of foundation and framework. So I think that should be the fundamental thing we have going forward, and just being willing and open to change and looking for new opportunities is kind of what we layer on top.
All right, there's a question over here in the audience. Do we have? Great.
Yeah.
Get ready, Kyle.
My name is Janelle McDonald. I'm wondering, as you in your position or the profession as a whole, especially as leadership roles, how you can promote sustainability in the environment in times of a changing climate, as well as massive waste and destruction on some parts of the climate?
Chad's quick to hand over the microphone to Kathy.
You have to take this one.
Yeah, well done, just as we planned. So, can you repeat the question? Yeah, I think as leaders, like that should just be another factor in our decision making. Like it's something that we experience in our business, you know, since day one, really. And you probably heard about it, like whenever cannabis was legalized last October, it was in the news everywhere that like excessive packaging, this, and you know, too much plastic, and a lot of it stems from requirements from Health Canada and other, you know, other factors, but it's something that we need to continue to be aware of, and like what we're doing now compared to then, like we're really considering like how can we reduce our environmental impact, like what can we do, even if it costs more money, like that has to be a factor in the decision-making process. So I think that's kind of one of the main things is like we can't just consider financial impacts of our decisions anymore. There's several impacts and several factors to consider. So I'd say that'd be the main one, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to press a little bit on that particular question and look to Chad and Kathy. Do you feel as a profession we're doing enough to drive change in terms of what we measure, to expand beyond those traditional financial measures into more environmental, social measures? Or can we be doing more, and if so, what?
Yeah, so I'd say the answer to your question is no, we have not shifted enough towards those sorts of measurements, and a lot of our measurement today is around financial, but what we are starting to find out, that's not really what's important to a lot of people, and especially I think this next generation, as we sort of hear what's going on in the news today. And I think, one of the things that we are, trying to focus on at Grant Thornton is how do we make our communities thrive? And as Chad talked about earlier, one of the things we're trying to do is get our partners to be more focused on their local community and what's happening, and to be involved so that they can better understand, the impact that we have, and that the whole, the ripple effect of what we do. And if our community is thriving, then as business owners, we will thrive. So,
Chad, can you share the cow's perspective or your own personal perspective?
Yeah. I'll preface this by saying I am definitely an environmentalist. This might sound like a bit of a capitalist when I say this, but I think it's important to measure this stuff, because I think, and to put financial terms to some of these environmental things, because I think when you do that, some of these decisions actually are worthwhile to do, and maybe that's what we need to do if we, that you can't really act on something if you're not measuring it, that whole kind of thing. I think if we really look really deep into the numbers, it's making more and more sense for companies to act environmentally, be good stewards of the land, especially when the cost of a lot of that stuff's coming down as more people do it, but also there's such a positive marketing spin. I know that sounds terrible, capitalist, but there is really a lot of benefits to doing it, which maybe are hard to calculate or not obvious at first, but I think that's one thing for sure that firms can do when they're talking to clients, is to educate them about the 360 view of everything, and let them know what opportunities are out there, and other clients, what success they've had. And I don't think we're doing enough, to answer your question. I don't think we're doing nearly enough, and we should be leading that forward and educating clients and educating the businesses we work in about the opportunities. And it's once the mass of companies and people start to move that direction, it gets easier and easier. So I think we need to kind of push that way as much as we can.
Thank you. Just looking around. All right. Still on that topic, in a sense, and Kathy, you alluded to this, could this be related to our challenges in terms of recruiting the next generation into our profession? Are they, I guess, seeing a purpose in a very holistic way represented by the CPA profession?
I'll just take quickly. Yeah, yes, I think you're right. I think if all of a sudden there were success stories about CPAs leading the charge on that front, I think that's absolutely going to resonate with the younger generation, and maybe stir their imagination to know, what could I do in that role, or what other opportunities are out there. I think it's just a small part of a bigger recruiting pie that we're going to have to look at, but for sure we can say it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, so I know for us, talent is sort of the major, I think, issue that we struggle with, and I think those businesses and firms that are doing the right things for the environment or their communities will definitely resonate with the next generation, and so it won't be just a nice thing to do. I think it'll become a business imperative to be successful, to engage with that group.
Janelle, did we answer your question? All right. Kathy, we'll stick with you. Rethinking value creation will be a key area of focus moving forward. How can we reshape the value that CPAs deliver?
Yes, I think we have to retool our people so that they can become the business advisors to the clients in a whole variety of ways that they need to. And so any of the work that CPAs are doing around historical data needs to lessen, because I do think we need to focus on future data. But then what do we do with that data? And you know, Chad talked about the cloud, and I think there's over 500 apps that are specialized towards different businesses. So I look at that and think, well, as a CPA, you cannot know all 500, and that's where I think the specialization of really understanding what technology can help different businesses can do, I think needs to be a focus, so that, you know, it's pretty hard to advise someone if you don't really understand their business inside and out. But I also think it's those softer skills that, you know, maybe accountants haven't been well known for, that are going to become even more important, just around being able to ask the right questions, build rapport with clients, and become that advisor that they trust.
Kyle, do you want to tackle that question of value creation from the private sector? How do you add value in your position?
These are really tough questions. How do I add value in my position? I think it's just, you know, we're faced with a lot of information. I think part of our value proposition is being able to help identify what information is valuable, and what's real. Like you know, in my job, we're looking at, like, say, sales reports, for example, for all of the different provinces, and understanding how our products are selling in each province. We're looking at information about a ton of different LPs, a ton of different products, and be able to identify trends is important, but there's also trends that really don't exist, that, you know, you have to understand that behind the trend, there might be something else driving it that's not real. So I think part of our value proposition is just being able to see what is real and what's not real, and also just being able to wade through massive amounts of information to find out what's really important, so we can help advise people, whether, you know, in a firm or help, you know, lead a company.
Thank you. That was a tough question. I thought that was an excellent response. Chad, thriving within a data-driven economy, which Kyle alluded to, is another obvious key tenet of moving forward. How can CPAs play a lead role in shaping data governance and become stewards of data integrity?
Yeah, I kind of touched on this. I think this is really the opportunity. Is a lot of this stuff is just coming to the forefront now, and there's a lot of opportunity for governing bodies and, you know, whether provincial or Canada-wide, kind of setting the policies on a lot of that stuff. And I think that naturally businesses and government are going to look for us as CPAs first, and one of the first groups they look to, you know, set that stuff. Is that, you know, that's what we've done in the past and around business and ethics and all of that stuff. So I think it's a huge opportunity for us, and I think we need to step forward when the opportunity is there, because, as I said, other people will do it if we don't. So I think it's we need to hire people. We need to go out into industry and find the people that are experts in this. We need to bring them into firms. We need to bring them into companies. We need to make it a huge part of the training programs, as I said. When, you know, you're going through the original CFE and all that stuff, it needs to be all tied into that, so that when these new accountants are coming through, that's top of mind for them. We need to put it as well on the CPD side. I think it is really crucial. Like, the most valuable asset to a lot of companies going forward will be their data. And we're kind of at the front end of it now, where a lot of companies are generating massive amounts of data and just kind of storing it and sitting on it and not really sure what to do with it. Or I've got it all here, maybe I'm not keeping it safe, maybe I'm not using it in the right way. So that is kind of, as we sit here now, that's accumulating. Companies are at that stage is where I look at it. Maybe they've got sensors, they've got sales data, they've got all this stuff piling in, and what they need is, okay, how do I manage this? How do I use it in a good, valuable way to the company? How do I keep it safe? So I think that there's, although we may be losing some bookkeeping business and things like that, these are the new opportunities that are opening up. And to be honest, they're much more exciting. There's much more upside. And I think that's really where we should be putting our attention.
We've talked a lot here this morning about retooling our members and training. So I want to kind of bring it back down to the real core, and that's the competency map, which outlines the competencies that we are training our new CPAs to. If you had to send a message to the leaders of our profession, what should our competency map be focusing on?
So one of the things that I see happening in our business is just around our people and helping our people grow. And, so I don't know how much, because I haven't been through the program for a long time, as Chad maybe brought up, but that, is there enough there on how to mentor and help our colleagues thrive and grow? Because I think that's going to be a really important piece of our practice.
Okay, so mentorship's one piece of it. And you alluded to the soft skills earlier. Kyle, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, I think also just flexibility. I think the traditional profession is changing, and what we're doing is changing. Like for me, not strictly involved with financial reporting, but also in operations. So I think just being able to understand different aspects than just strictly the financial part of it.
Chad, did you want to add any?
I would echo that statement. I think it really needs to be flexible. I think there should be multiple paths through, as I know they've done to expand that even in recent years, but it should probably be expanded even further. There should be core tenets you have to get to, but then open it up, because it's just broader and broader, and trying to pigeonhole people through one route is just not the way to do it. When I was going through, I kind of viewed, when I finished my undergrad, I kind of thought, do I want to do a CPA or an MBA? And that was my decision to make. So I think whether we want to admit it or not, in the recruiting world, that's what we're competing against largely. So I think opening it up so that when people view that, they see a path forward through CPA where they end up the same way that they would as an MBA or in the same potential job. So I think that it needs to be very flexible.
We'll stay with you, Chad. If we continue to operate, oh, sorry, yeah, absolutely, sorry, Tanya.
So based on, I heard Chad allude to, deciding between a CPA and an MBA. So what do you think sets a CPA apart? Like what's the defining factor between, a CPA and say an MBA or a CFA or somebody else? So what sets the CPA apart from others? That is a specific skill? Is it our ethics?
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
I guess I'll speak from my personal experiences. There was that on-the-job part to the CPA. I worked with Thornton, and so I got to see the inside of a lot of businesses, and it was kind of that hands-on as I went through the program, so I was doing them hand-in-hand. To me, that was appealing, and I thought would help with my future career a lot. I think also the CPA, when I looked at it, it was kind of, which I've mentioned before, it's a bit of that pressure cooker kind of situation where, there's a whole lot of information in a small amount of time, and if you can parse through, get all that info out of there, I think that when I looked at it was really valuable, and I think that's something that I use in my career every day now, which those skills I developed, which I think we need to be at the kind of the bedrock of the whole thing. I mean, that's my differences. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that also, and no disrespect to anybody who has an MBA in here, if there are any, but from my experience after I finished my BBA, I also considered an MBA, and I sent out a couple applications, wrote the GMAT twice, did terrible the first time, did okay the second time, didn't get into any of the schools I applied to, so I had no choice but to continue with CPA. But in honesty, I decided that the MBA wasn't what I really wanted, and I think that for me, after finishing a BBA, the MBA was kind of like a rehash of a BBA with some extra kind of very broad management skill layered on top. So I think it, very focused on management, where CPA, I think, we're more in the details. So I think we can provide, or the designation can provide extra value, like really in the details and really making decisions, where the MBA, I think, was more of a leadership style skill. Not to say we can't lead. But
Having had Kyle as a student, I can't imagine an MBA program turning you down. I do want to make that comment. I'll stick you with another hard question, though. If we continue to operate status quo in the same way as we are today, where would you expect our profession to be in 10 years?
I think that the question has kind of implies a negative outcome. Yeah, I think that if we continue to operate the way we are today, I guess ignoring the CPD part of it, I think that we'd become irrelevant eventually. If we were still trying to do bookkeeping and financial reporting and tax preparation and auditing down the road, I'd say there'd be other businesses doing the exact same thing with AI, and we'd have nobody, like no customers, and it'd be just the same for industry. Like if I continued to do my job tasks, I'd be very quickly replaced by a computer, more than likely. But I think that, given that we have professional development requirements and we are constantly learning, I think if we continue to do that, I think that we'll be, a very relevant profession. If we, continue to learn about IT and data manipulation and data security, and then also being able to work with systems and manage systems instead of preparing information, I think that will be a much more relevant profession down the road.
Kathy?
Yeah, so I think if we look at what we traditionally provide as a profession, and if you look at financial statements and the different gap and doing gas audits, I don't know where that'll all lead us to if that's the path we continue on. I think more and more we are finding our financial statements not really user-friendly, and at some point in time, I think, if we look at mostly who the users of financial statements are, they're third-party lenders, and they're going to have all the data they need to make lending decisions without getting a 40-page financial statement from us that's 4 months from the prior year. And so, I wonder as a profession, when do we have to start making the shift in investing in standards of historical financial statements versus, what really are we going to provide to the third-party lender on some of that data to support what decisions they're going to make.
So really, it sounds like shifting to more of a real-time delivery model versus that historical perspective. What do you see are the biggest obstacles internally within our profession, or perhaps externally, preventing us from achieving that, from moving there?
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about this earlier. It's where we are today and how much resource we have invested doing things the old way, and what we need to do to shift because today the banks still do want financial statements. But, you know, as we watch some of these fintech companies come out, you know, they're looking for different metrics like postal codes and other data, you know, age. And so it's just, you know, I mean, how fast is that shift going to happen? And how much, you know, do we retool, and when do we retool? Because you do have to, you only have so much resource, so you have to balance between what's going on today, but what you're going to need to be able to do in the future. And I don't think it's that far off the future as it once was.
Chad, only a couple minutes left, folks, so if anyone's sitting on, you know, that dying question, the clock is ticking. Okay, Tanya.
Well, I was just going to say, although I heard Kathy refer to trusted advisor, nobody's really talked about the ethics side of the profession and the integrity that, you know, CPAs pride themselves on, and how that sets us apart from others. So I'm just wondering then, based on your experience, are you not seeing that as a value of the profession? Like, I just haven't really heard that come out in the conversation, and so I'm just wondering how you see that fitting into everything going forward.
Yeah, I guess in my head it goes without saying, but that's not a good answer. It is fundamental, for sure. I think when people look at CPAs, I mean, when we complete a financial statement, people view it as the truth. It's absolutely rock solid, and that's kind of what people come to us for, and that's why they pay us so much to do these things. I think going forward, that just needs to be in everything. When we're providing advice, we need to be confident in our answers, and we also need to not be giving advice that is unethical or, you know, borders on any of that stuff. I think it's just, that should be, and in my head it is, and maybe it's not in the general public, or maybe we need to talk more about it, but that is just absolutely at the fundamental level of a CPA. I know it's becoming more of a thing with CPD hours, and there's requirements and so, built in there now for ethics, which to me, I don't know, that's a bigger debate, I guess, if you can teach ethics or not, but to me, that's how we're viewed. I think our public perception is that we're stewards of ethics, and we're going to guide our clients in ethical ways, and when we get into companies, we're going to guide those in ethical ways. I don't think that that's tarnished. I don't think there's anything there, but I guess maybe we should promote that more and say that more in our advertising and our recruiting and everything. But to me, I guess I didn't bring it up so far because it's always been part of it, and it's just the fundamental level for me.
I do think it is a very important piece of our way forward, especially as we delve into more transactions happening just automatically behind the scenes of, you know, I think about, you know, a lot of business owners, there's just so much data coming at them, you know, but things are just happening in their bank accounts that, you know, they need to trust someone. And, you know, we had a good discussion about this at our senior leadership table with Grant Thornton a couple of weeks ago around, you know, where's the place we fit. And so, you know, eventually, you know, there's probably no question someday, you know, Canada Revenue Agency is going to prepare the tax return, and the banks are going to say, we got the statements. But, you know, I think as business owners, though, you know, you're going to still need that third party that you really trust to delve through some of the data to make sure CRA has it right or the bank has it right. And I think that's, you know, that's a really great place for CPAs to sit.
Kyle, any closing remarks from you on the ethical kind of trusted advisor? No? All right. I think we're out of time. Tanya, are we? One. All right, Chad, a closing comment from you.
I guess to wrap it all up, I'm an optimist, so I think that we will get to where we need to get to. We're all relatively smart people. There's a lot of us. We should be able to figure this out. I think the biggest hurdle, as you asked earlier, to me is fear of change or fear of moving from the comfort zone. It's something I know firms will face for sure going forward. As someone who's tried to roll out multiple levels of technology in companies I've been involved with, I know very much about the fear of change. And it's a very real thing, and it can absolutely derail things and projects. So I think as we move forward, we need to find ways that we can push ourselves into those uncomfortable areas and new technologies and new learning. But we also need to be kind of the ones that are encouraging others and showing ways forward. We just need to be forward thinking, and we need to be willing to be forward ourselves and to advise.
So I think it's just a really exciting time to be in the profession. I think it's really fantastic that computers are going to take away some of the most boring pieces of our work that we've done in the past, and just focus on the really great stuff and the fun stuff. I always felt like in my career that, you had to get through some of the repetitive tasks to get to the really great stuff where you got to sit down with a client and talk about their business. And so, the future is that we don't have to do that other stuff, and we can just focus on the really fun stuff of what our profession could be. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think our profession is only going to become more relevant. We'll have tons of new opportunities that we haven't maybe had access or time to do before. I think also, going forward, we'll have to consider a whole bunch of different factors, like we talked about earlier, and like Janelle brought up. When it comes to environment and climate, I think we can be leaders in this. We're leaders in our profession, in industry. We're trusted by businesses. One of the things, if you've been paying attention to the news at all this week, you've probably heard of Greta Thunberg. The young lady sailed across the Atlantic. One of the things she said was, it was something like, the house is on fire and nobody's doing anything, and she expects action from leaders. I think, we are leaders, and we have the ears of leaders in industry. So I think that's a real opportunity for us today. So lots of exciting things to come.
Great, thank you to each of you. I hope everyone in the audience picked up on something that kind of compels each of us to reflect inward on our profession and what we can each individually be doing to position our profession for future success. And with that, I want to hand the floor over to our CEO, Tanya.
I just wanted to mention that after the meeting today, I don't know if we'll get it up today, but we are planning to post the questions into a discussion paper online that members can go in then and add their own comments. So you heard some questions posed. Maybe you have a different response to some of those questions than what our panelists had today. Maybe you have some suggestions on how we can make the profession more appealing to females, how we can attract younger students into the profession. So we're going to post a paper, and hopefully you will go online and post your own thoughts or comments if you have some answers. They'll only ever help us in planning and going forward, so we'd really love to hear from you, the members, your own ideas on some of these questions. I would also like to ask you to join me in thanking Amy for moderating today, and our three brave panelists. This is the first time we've done this format, and there are three brave fellows that agreed to do this with us today, so I'd certainly like to thank them. The business meeting will be starting in a few minutes, so after we thank these folks, and you can grab a coffee, we'll be set up, and the AGM business meeting will be starting right after this. So thank you very much.